Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you again, Mr. Clayton. You know, a big part of the job of the chairman of the SEC is enforcement, a cop on the beat on Wall Street. And you've said in your testimony today that you intend to enforce the law strictly, and I very much agree with that goal. But I'm concerned that you won't be able to achieve it. It is clear that the SEC will play a critical role in deciding, the SEC chair will play a critical role in deciding what the enforcement position of the SEC will be. And in recent history, Republican commissioners on the SEC have favored weaker enforcement, while Democratic commissioners have sought tougher enforcement. The chair is often the deciding vote. And of course, if the chair can't vote and the remaining SEC commissioners split along party lines, then major enforcement actions don't go forward and serious wrongdoing may go unpunished. So it's important to think about how often the SEC could be caught in such a deadlock. Under the president's executive order for ethics, the first 2 years of your tenure as SEC chairman, you would have to recuse yourself from participating in any enforcement matter involving a former client of yours. That's about half of your term as chair. So based on your personal client disclosures then, for half of your tenure as SEC chair, you would not be able to vote to enforce the law against several big banks, including Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Barclays, and UBS. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Those banks have repeatedly violated securities laws in the past few years, but if they violate securities laws again in your first 2 years as SEC chairman, you can't vote to punish them. And I think that's a problem. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. Your recusals would not be limited just to your own former clients. The ethics executive order also requires you to recuse yourself for 2 years from any matter in which your former law firm, Sullivan & Cromwell, represents a party. Now, Sullivan & Cromwell is a leading New York law firm with a very long list of Wall Street clients. So for half of your term as SEC chair, you would not be able to vote to punish any corporation or bank that uses Sullivan & Cromwell as their lawyer. Is that right?
I believe that's a fair summary, Senator. Yes.
Thank you. More potential cases with a deadlock and no enforcement, and that's a problem. And even beyond Sullivan & Cromwell's already long list of Wall Street clients, any reasonably strategic company that wanted to try to avoid an SEC enforcement action could simply hire Sullivan & Cromwell to represent them before the agency, and then you couldn't vote for enforcement against that company. Is that right, Mr. Clayton?
I'm not sure about that, Senator.
Well, you do know the rule that if they are represented by Sullivan & Cromwell in front of the agency, then you're going to be banned from being able to vote against them.
If they are represented by Sullivan & Cromwell in front of the agency, I would not be able to participate.
That was my point.
That doesn't mean that.
So more cases potentially that you cannot participate in, meaning more cases potentially here with a deadlock and no enforcement. I think that's another problem. So it's important to think about how often, as we go through this, if President Trump wanted to make sure that the SEC would have a hard time in going after his Wall Street friends, it seems to me you would be the perfect SEC chair. You can't vote to punish some of the biggest names on Wall Street. That means those cases would be at least more likely to end up in deadlock, which means those companies could skate free. And I just want to point out, this is not a theoretical problem. Recusals were a very big issue for the outgoing SEC chair, Mary Jo White. Like you, she came from a major Wall Street law firm, and according to the New York Times, in her short time heading up the SEC, she had to recuse herself in at least 48 enforcement matters because of conflicts involving her former clients, her former law firm, and her husband's clients and law firm. At least 48 cases in which she couldn't vote to punish a big company because the other commissioners were often split on enforcement matters. Chair White's recusals led the commission to deadlock time and time again, which meant that corporations that may have broken the law were able to get off easier. Your recusal problems seem to be even more severe than Chair White's. With you as SEC chair, it looks like Wall Street can breathe a little easier knowing that you won't be voting against them, and there's likely to be weaker enforcement. So here's my question. Can you explain why, out of all the people who could have been selected to head the SEC, you are the right person for this job?
Thank you. And I want to say that the question of whether I'm recused from a matter doesn't mean that there will be deadlock. I do believe that the current
Mr. Clayton, I don't quite understand that. If there's not a majority to go forward on an enforcement action, if the other commissioners split 2-2, that is a deadlock. And if you are recused, that leaves 4 commissioners, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Republicans have consistently gone for weaker enforcement, Democrats for stronger enforcement. You come here today and say, I'm going to go for stronger enforcement. You're not going for stronger enforcement if you can't vote.
Well, I'm not sure about that characterization, but I do know that
The characterization of a deadlock?
no, the characterization of who goes for more enforcement.
Well, take a look at the data on that.
Okay, but what I would like to say is that I believe that on enforcement matters, the commission is almost always unanimous on enforcement matters.
I think you want to check your numbers on that, Mr.
Okay,
Clayton. And you want to check what has just happened. We have experience on this. You know, I'm going to yield because I recognize the chair has been very indulgent in letting me go over. But I just want to underline the point that holding Wall Street firms accountable is a major job of the SEC's mission. And the SEC chair needs to be able to participate in those enforcement actions, to be the cop on the beat for the American people, not on the sidelines when former clients and Wall Street firms are able to skate free. And I think that raises a very serious concern about your nomination to be chair.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you.